Welcome to Nobody Told Me. I'm Laura Owens.
And I'm Jan Black.
And joining us on this episode is Lisa Taddeo, the New York Times best-selling author of the book Three Women, which is a nearly decade-long investigation into the sex lives and desires of three American women.
Three Women is one of the most talked about books this year, and we can't wait to talk about it with Lisa. So, Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
Tell us how this book came about, because it's a fascinating story.
So I was reading Gay Talese's Thy Neighbor's Wife, which was written published in 1980. And Mr. Talese, who is right now about an 85-year-old man, a journalist, and he is a long-celebrated journalist. He had spent about a decade researching his book about desire in America. And it was incredibly immersive in the sense that he was at a swingers colony in California, and he participated in the swinging to be able to report about it more in depth.
So to speak.
And so to speak, exactly. And I read the book. I admired the immersive aspect of it. I admired the amount of time spent and so much of the detail and the reporting, but ultimately I felt like it was told from an incredibly male perspective, and I was wondering what the same subject of desire would look like told from a female perspective. And so that was kind of the genesis of the idea.
And you went on a big journey to find the three women that you focused on in the book, and how did that all come about?
So I was living in New York. I didn't really know what to do, where to begin. I had an editor who believed in me, but no real guidance. It was just kind of like, do whatever you think is best, which was kind, but also I didn't know what I thought was best. So I began, the first thing I did for the book was to fly to San Francisco to do this profile these women at this place called the Porn Castle, which is now defunct, but it was in the Mission District of San Francisco. And it was basically a warren of rooms where they were videotaping pornographic films, and also women would be in a room masturbating while people on the other end on the other end of the computer line paid by the 15-30-minute interval. And there were these two women there, a gay couple, of a young woman, probably in her early 20s, who was performing in the films and having sex with men. And the director of the films was her girlfriend. And I was so intrigued by that and what it might feel like to not only direct your partner in a pornographic film, but direct your partner in a pornographic film in which she has sex with the opposite gender, which is not her proclivity. So I was really intrigued by that. I spent a number of weeks with them and at the Porn Castle, but it was not really affecting to them in a certain way. It was very much a job for them, which was very, very great and cool, but it wasn't what I was looking for. And that's when I kind of decided that while the sex in that porn castle that I saw, like there were women hogtied from the ceiling and being penetrated by machines. So while aspect of it, it was nuts. So while that was wild, it wasn't what I was looking for. I wanted to get at the emotions behind sex, and desire became to me the sort of code word for what I was looking for. And so by the end of the 10 years, I would have driven across the country 6 times. But the first time I did it, I drove across the country posting up signs, like looking for stories with business cards and all these weird ways that I thought I was going to be able to get subjects. And while in the middle of that drive, I stopped in Indiana to see the Kinsey Institute, and I met a doctor there who introduced me to a number of women in his practice who were undergoing these hormone treatments, and they were feeling newly sensual in their thinner bodies. They were just feeling really good about themselves. And I got back to New York, and I just felt like, those women were so interesting to me. They were so willing to talk to me. Indiana was not New York in so many ways that was necessary, I decided, for the book. And I was too much in New York and in my life, and I felt like I needed to get out of it in order to write the book that I'd been struggling to understand what the point of it was. So I moved to Indiana rather blindly. My friend, I didn't really tell anybody. I just kind of uprooted and went because I figured if I made a big deal out of it, it wouldn't happen. Mm-hmm. So the lease was almost up at my apartment. I literally just packed my stuff up in a pod and went. And that's where I met the first woman, Lena, where I started this discussion group in the back room of that doctor's office. And that Lena's the housewife in Indiana who came into that room. And one of the first things she said was that her husband no longer wanted to kiss her on the mouth and that the sensation offended him.
And so how did you get her to take part in this project?
Well, it started by my saying, I'm writing this book. I was very honest. I was like, I don't know what it's about. It's about desire. I don't know what I'm looking for. I don't know if you're going to be a chapter or the whole thing or one line, or if I would even use it at all. In the beginning, I started by saying I wanted to use real names. So that was real. That was a real detractor from what I was trying to do. So I told all the women in that group that I was writing a book, that I didn't exactly know what the book was going to be, and that I just wanted, just talk to me, just tell me your stories. And, if at the end of this night or this week or this month, you want to stop talking to me, or you want me to strike everything that you said from the record, then that's fine too. So that was the way that I got people to talk, was by telling them that they could do whatever they wanted, and I wasn't going to. And that happened. I lost people after many months.
Wow.
So, and that was fine. I mean, I knew that was the only way to get what I needed, was to make sure that people really wanted to talk, and also that they were okay with their lives going out into the world in a certain way.
Did you have to become friends with these women? Or I shouldn't say have to. Did you become friends with these women in order for them to open up and tell you their stories?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I still talk to each of them. I talked to Maggie, the woman in North Dakota who has an alleged affair with her teacher. I talk to her daily, sometimes hourly, because it's her real name out there, and there's a lot going on, and that continues to go on. So I want to keep her abreast of it, and I want her to be able to ask me whatever questions that pop up. In general, I mean, I think I would be a sociopath.
Yeah, right.
If I didn't care about people that I basically either lived amongst or talked to every day, or, because I went to the mall with them, and I went to coffee, and I worked out with them. I mean, there was a lot of things that we did together. So like you would do with a friend. I mean, was the conversation, it went both ways, but it was also it was probably 98% my asking questions. So while it was always basically clear that I was the interviewer, it was like I was just, that's kind of my natural mode as a friend, because I have such high anxiety that I prefer to listen to other people talk. And so for me, it was kind of a natural way to be friends with somebody, was just listening. That's why I'm doing all this sort of interview stuff. I'm like, I am not used to talking. I'm used to asking questions, but the other way around is very sort of really, really awkward for me.
And so you touched on two of the women. You touched on Maggie from North Dakota and Lena from Indiana. And then the third woman, Sloan. Tell us about her, the third of the three women you profile.
So I had moved to Newport, Rhode Island, and I moved for a couple of reasons. One of the reasons I moved was because there were a number of people I was talking to already that I had been introduced to through some of my calls of action. I posted these signs on cars to go windows and in bathrooms and just across the whole country. So I'd found a couple of people in Newport who I also wanted Newport or something like it, because I love the idea of it being a seasonal place where in the summer all the tourists would descend, and then in the fall and winter it would just sort of be the locals in this very tight-knit community. So I moved there, and I was talking to this young man, this gay man who was, I think, about 21 or 20 at the time, and he was a professional life coach. And I remember when I heard about him, I was just like, oh my God, a professional life coach. Like, I was just very intrigued, and he was wonderful. But while I was there talking to him and another woman and another man, I heard these rumors about this other woman whose name was Sloan, and who was this, the things I kept hearing was gorgeous, amazing. Oh my God, have you talked to Sloan yet? That was kind of the way that it was going. And I didn't know why. And as I kind of heard more, I heard two rumors about her. And the first one was that her husband liked to watch her have sex with other men in front of him, or, you know, she would do it down the street and send it to him over video. And the second rumor that was delivered was almost more alarm than the first, was that her husband wanted to have sex with her every day. And not only did she allow it, but she enjoyed it. And when I heard that, I was like, wow. So for me, Sloane's story, and all of their stories, in a sense, their narratives were very compelling, but almost as compelling was the idea that the judgment around them was so great and so dire, and the way that affected them and desire in the country, and what it meant to the way that women expressed their desire was just, it kind of felt like one of the themes, and I wasn't even looking for it, but it just sort of materialized on the page.
And another theme that came up was assault, and that came up in Maggie and Lena's lives. Were their stories only about what happened to them, or were they able to move on in a way and become better people and sexual in a different way after that?
You know, one of the things that I found about speaking to so many women was that after you speak to somebody for a couple of weeks or a month or 3 months, you're going to hear almost everything. Mm-hmm. And you're going to hear about assault, because I heard about assault with, I would say, 90% of the women I spoke to, whether it was large assaults that we would deem large, or relatively smaller assaults. There were always a number of them that shaped the way that the woman addressed her sexuality, whether the woman became gay after it, or whether the woman became more aggressive with men after. There were many ways that they were affected. It was not the same way, but they were affected the same way that one would be affected by a great passion and a great love story, and not being able to find the same thing. Or so that all of that was very shaping.
Did that surprise you that so many women, you're talking about 90%, had some kind of an assault in their lives?
Yes and no, because I think, and one of the things that it made me do was go back and sift through my own memory. And when you do, there was one memory, one of the many that I wrote about for a magazine, was that when I was 13 actually, I took a walk on the beach, and my parents were on their towels outside the hotel. And I was looking for some, small slice of independence with helicopter parents. And I walked down the beach. I was slathered in baby oil because I was trying to get a tan. And I fell asleep on this stretch of sand. And I woke up to a man in his 40s probably licking my shoulder. And
oh my God.
I know, it was crazy. And I remember, nothing else happened to the best of my recollection, because it was something that was
weird.
So deep. Yeah, it was
creepy.
Super weird.
Yeah.
Creepy. Yeah, and strange, and just completely, yeah. And so, I remember walking back to my I don't remember what happened. Like, I definitely, what I feel like happened was that I definitely didn't say, what the hell are you doing? I was probably scared, but also something I've found myself doing that I found a lot of women doing is kind of not wanting the man or whomever to feel like you didn't like them. And that was kind of an early emotion that I felt. And And I walked back to my parents. I also had like a second-degree sunburn from falling asleep with baby oil. And I remember that night feeling like I was sunburnt and also like I had done something wrong. And I just felt like I was wrong in all these ways. I got a sunburn because I fell asleep. It was because I fell asleep, because I was wearing a bikini and not a one piece. And who was I to do that as a young girl? I just felt like I had done something wrong. And so I didn't tell my parents what had happened. So, I mean, I bring that up just to say that, I mean, it's creepy and it's weird. I wasn't raped. I wasn't, I was licked. I don't know. It's crazy. It was not the first time I was licked by a stranger in like a weird situation, which is also weird. And it,
also creepy.
asked a lot of questions. Yeah. And so, it just brought up so many things. And when for example, another one now I'm talking, I went on this Match.com date when I was in my 20s, and the guy that I was on the date with tweaked my nipple, like out of nowhere. We weren't like in that space. And so there's so many things like that they just add up, and you either forget them or you push them down, or you might have one large thing happen and it sort of, but all the other ones just disappear. So I found that, like I said, with 90%, it's not like, like Lena, for example, was raped by 3 boys. It wasn't to that extent all the time or much of the time, but there were a lot like that. And there were just a lot of multiple little ones.
What was the most surprising thing that you learned that women do like that maybe they don't talk about amongst friends?
That's an interesting question that I haven't been asked. I found, it varied. That's the thing that surprised me the most, was kind of the things that women wanted, that women that I knew, that I was surprised that they had that sort of, that kind of desire, that like, it was, some of them were a little like strange, and the word strange is unfair, but they were not what I would have expected that woman to want. I feel like one of the biggest things that I took away from it was that I was more prudish than everybody that I met and spoke to.
Interesting.
Yeah. And for somebody who loves to talk about sex and write about sex and hear about sex, and I was just like, and I was never endingly intrigued and also surprised that there's just, it was so much more sex going on than I expected there to be, everywhere, almost everywhere. And even if in a sort of situation where it was a marriage that seemed quiet, and that there's just, even in the quiet situations, I found that there were people who just, like, after a couple of weeks, all this stuff comes out. And it's all the stuff that bleeds up and over Instagram and Facebook. And it's just remarkable. I think that it's interesting.
How did these women change parts of themselves to try to gain love and acceptance from the ones they were with or the ones they desired?
I think with Maggie, the young woman in North Dakota who has the alleged relationship with her teacher, she was feeling so good that this authority figure, this man that she respected, this pillar of the community, who ended up being awarded North Dakota's Teacher of the Year, that this man saw so much value and worth in her, that he validated her. So she was, in a sense, kind of like living up to this new charge. And at the same time, she had to be very, very careful not to upset the relationship, not to be too, it was a balance. She had to be girlish, but she couldn't be too girlish because then it would be scary. She had to be mature, but not too mature. Like, there was that balance that she had. And the balance is something I saw a lot. I think women balance a lot in general, just in friendships and careers. They do a lot of, balancing acts. And with Lena in Indiana, she starts up this affair with her high school lover who she had always been obsessed with. And for her, if he's married, she's married, even though she told her husband, who didn't want to kiss her, that she wanted happened to get a divorce. But she's in this new relationship with this man who's married, and he's working on a construction site 4 hours away from her. He's telling her where he is. She's like running off to go meet him. She's doing everything she can to see him. And at the same time, she has to, when she gets there, even though she wonders why he hasn't called or written for 2 weeks, she can't seem like too needy or wondering why he did, because then he says at one point, look, I think that, this is not, you're too into this kind of a thing. And, in a way, there's nothing worse you could say to someone than you're too into this. So let's
totally.
stop. Because, And that's the thing that always surprises me when people say that. I'm like, why would, if you, like, you should just, I'll never forget, I had a boyfriend in high school who I liked. But I also started feeling a little bit like, oh, I'm in high school. Why am I with this guy? Why is it getting serious? But I still liked him. And then he came to this pool party. I was out with my friend, and he just came up and he said, I have to tell you something. I thought he was going to break up with me. And part of me was sad and part of me was like relieved. And he said, I just want to see more of you and spend more time with you. And I was like, oh. And I just think that if he had said the opposite, like I want to break up, I probably would have spent the next year of my life mourning that relationship.
Yeah.
So that's just normal, right? But I saw that to know that for yourself and to know it psychologically speaking, but to see it hundreds of times, it kind of like it really wires your brain to see things in a different way.
And what was your own life like as you were doing this research over the 8 years?
Well, I got married and had a child in the course of it. It remains very difficult. My daughter's 4 years old now. And it was very difficult towards the end. When she moved to a lot of the places with me, she did a lot of the ends of the research with me. I had pictures of myself in like bars in North Dakota with her in a sling. So it was difficult. It was difficult in the beginning without anybody, and then it was difficult with people. When I was still kind of dating, I wasn't really dating while I was in after I stopped. The point that I started writing the book, I kind of stopped only because I had moved out of New York, and I in Indiana I wasn't looking for people. I was doing this stuff, and I wasn't going to. I would go to bars with these women and just listen to them, and I had no friends outside of that. So yeah, my life was lonely, and then it was. And then it was full. But it was, the book has just been the last decade of my life. And now it's the only thing my daughter has known. The other day I was talking to this writer who is really great. And he was talking to me and he was like, and then, Three Women, and I'm not Three Women. He's like, and then, oh no, I'm sorry. He said to my daughter, your mom's book is really great. And she goes, oh, why are we talking about Three Women again? And what was so amazing was that I didn't even know she knew the title because she's 4 years old.
Wow.
But when she saw it, I was like, oh my God. I was like, this is crazy. Like, this is part of her life. And so, yeah, it's been weird.
In the beginning and at the end of the book, you recount a story about your Italian mother and the man who used to follow her inappropriately. And since we are a mother-daughter duo, I'm wondering, in your view, what is the legacy of mothers and daughters when it comes to relationships, sex, and desire?
What I've found and that's the thing that kind of, that prologue and the epilogue came very much after all of the reporting and all of the writing of the rest of the book was done. I had seen so much of the way mothers are inspiring to their daughters, or fearful. I'm not fearful of the daughters are fearful of moms. I mean, some have that with dads, but it's different because there's the gender aspect, the mother-daughter aspect. For me, and it was just very personal because I saw that a lot. But then when I thought about my own mom, who had passed away, I had not gotten to ask her the sort of adult questions, or I just had these snippets of memories. And for me, it was just like these little things. Like I never saw my mom really without makeup until she got sick, and all these things had shaped the way that I the way that I don't leave the house without mascara. And my clothes are terrible though. Like I'll take my daughter to school in rags, basically. Please, you have to stop. I can't handle you. Like it's so bad that someone who normally wouldn't care about that has to say something about it. So like I won't not wear mascara. And that's my mom's influence, and those little tiny things that have to do with beauty and perception of beauty and desire. So are so ingrained by our moms. And one of the other things, for me, we talk so much about daddy issues, and I didn't really have daddy issues. I very much had mommy issues and continue to have mommy issues. I was just texting with my brother, and I was like, "Did you?" And I talk about it all the time. It's like an obsession. And I mean, not talking. I mean, obviously, the missing is its own thing, but just talking about specific little things. I think it's a big, and I'm sure you guys might feel the same, but I just think it's a really big. It's big. It's big. We know it's big, but to see it in the form of desire and the way that women see their own and the way that they're willing to talk about it or not talk about it. My parents didn't. I grew up very Catholic in a Catholic household. And when I got an apartment with my then boyfriend, who I'd been with for like 4 years, we got 2 bedrooms, even though that was like more money. Because I needed my parents to think that we were sleeping in these 2 separate bedrooms. And I don't think that they really thought that, but it was like this construct that had to be there. And it was unspoken, but very much present.
I'm wondering how Maggie, Lena, and Sloane's lives have changed since the book came out and what their reactions have been.
So I gave them all the book before it was, when it was just approved, and I asked them to, tell me whatever changes or additions or subtractions. They, interestingly enough, did not want to take away anything, which was amazing to me. They did have a lot of additions, or Sloane and Maggie did, which was really great because it added layers and stuff. Since the book's been out, the one thing that nobody knew, least of all me, is that it was going to be as widely read as it's been. I really thought I was writing a quiet book. I think that the women that I was talking to thought the same thing. At one point, Maggie's mom said to me, you've been talking to us for like 3 years. Is this, what is, like basically she was like, is there even a book? Are you just like a crazy person? And so, nobody really knew. And so for Maggie, she has said it's given her closure, which is one of the finest things I could have heard, specifically because I get notes every day. She gets hundreds, I think, of notes from women who just say, young women mostly, who say, thank you for making me feel seen. Thank you for, I'm in this situation or in this situation. And now I feel, there have been people from her town who have said, I always believed you, or I'm sorry, I didn't believe you. It's been insane in a great way. And then her hero, Abby Wambach, the soccer star who she'd had plastered all over her bedroom walls as a kid, posted the book on Instagram, like she was reading the book. And I wrote, Maggie, you're Maggie's hero. And she wrote, Maggie's my hero.
Oh,
and so,
neat.
that was just insane. Yeah, so stuff like that has just been great. And as for Lena and Sloane, I think the biggest hope at this point is that people don't find out who they are. They're proud of their stories, but at this point, I think that if it had been quieter, they wouldn't have minded. But now that it's where it is, it's a different story.
Lisa, our show is called Nobody Told Me, and we always ask our guests, what is your nobody told me lesson? So for you, what is your nobody told me lesson? What did you learn about taking on a project like this, or about desire or sex or relationships in general, or women? Take it anywhere you want. What did you learn that you were kind of surprised by, and maybe you wish somebody had warned you about before?
Nobody told me that the writer had to hire their own fact checker. No, I'm just kidding. I mean, that's one. Nobody told me that that you really don't know when something is over. you don't know when a story is over. So at a certain point, you have to just kind of cinch a story somewhere when it's nonfiction. And nobody told me that it's this scary to write. I knew it was going to be scary to write about real people because I had written articles for multiple magazines, Esquire, New York, etc. But writing about real people at book length and their desire is probably one of the craziest subjects and endeavors to take on, I think. And I'm not saying that to retroactively pat myself on the back, but nobody told me that it was going to be this hard. And at the same time, how could I not have known?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's great. And how can people connect with you and learn more about the book?
My website is, let me just check to make sure I have it right, because I'm very new to the whole, I've been living underground for some time. LisaTaddeo.com goes to my book stuff, and then also threewomen.com, I think. I'm sorry, threewomenbook.com is about the book itself. And my Instagram, which which a lot of people have been connecting with me on, which is cool, is Lisa D. Taddeo. That's my handle.
All right, great. Lisa, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for having me. It was an absolute pleasure.
It was. Our thanks to Lisa Taddeo. Again, her book is called Three Women. I'm Jan Black.
And I'm Laura Owens.
You're listening to Nobody Told Me. Thank you so much for joining us.